Hi, I'm Pastor Bill of Meat of the Word Ministries. Thanks for tuning in. I'm continuing my thoughts on the rapture. This is part 4, the rapture of the saints. I don't want to call it the rapture of the church anymore, but the rapture of the saints, the rapture of the body of Christ. Now, we've looked at two Bible references, 1 Corinthians chapter 15 and 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, where the Apostle Paul speaks about us being changed in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, and how he said that we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with the Lord in the air, and so shall we ever be with the Lord. Not in the air, but because he's going to be on the earth, so we're going to come back on the earth. I want to go back today to 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, and I want to begin my discussion of what I believe is qualifications for a pre-tribulation rapture. Qualifications for a pre-tribulation rapture. Now, this is something that most Christians do not understand. It apparently is not being taught yet in the church very much. But because we identify so well with the salvation that we're saved not by works, but by faith and grace, that they think that that means even the rapture is part of it. But actually, and if you need to keep this in your mindset here, the rapture, any rapture, the pre-tribulation rapture, mid-tribulation rapture, post-tribulation rapture, they are all going to be a part of the reward for faithfulness or reward for obedience. It is a reward. God has a reward system very clearly defined, and Jesus really highlighted it in the New Testament. So let's take a look here. I'm going to read from 1 Thessalonians. Remember that the Apostle Paul had only been there for 3 weeks. He preached to them so he would not be chargeable to God day and night, he said. He went from house to house, to the synagogues, to the marketplaces, gave everything he had before he was chased out of that town. And he says in his closing remarks of his first letter to them, after he has explained a little bit about the rapture, he goes on to say, "But of the times and the seasons, regarding all the second coming events, brethren, you have no need that I write unto you. For yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord so cometh as a thief in the night." The reason they knew this perfectly or precisely is because he taught it to them perfectly and precisely. And he says in verse 3, "For when you shall say, when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travail that comes upon a woman, and they shall not escape." Now you ought to underline that word, escape. They shall not escape. Then he goes on to say this in verse 4, "But ye, brethren, are not in darkness, that that day should overtake you as a thief. You are children of light and the children of the day. You are not of the night, nor of the darkness." Verse 6 says, and this is an important verse here, it says, "Therefore let us not sleep as do others." Literally, the word others here in the Greek means the remaining ones. Let us not sleep as do the remaining ones, the ones that will be left behind. Why? For they that sleep in the night, and they that be drunken are drunken in the night. But let us who are of the day be sober, putting on the breastplate of righteousness, and faith and love, and the helmet and hope of salvation. For God hath not appointed us to wrath, but to obtain salvation. Now, many people have looked at this and said, well, he's not appointed us to wrath. And so they grab hold of that one verse, verse 9, and they hold on to that without any respect or any regard for the things that it just said to them. And the first thing we see in verse 6 is he says, "Let us not therefore sleep." So we can be sleeping is the implication here. Paul would never have said that if he was suggesting that it's guaranteed. You're not sleeping, you won't be sleeping, you're all going to be ready. He warns you not to. He says put on this breastplate of faith, hope, love, and expectancy of his return. He tells them to be sober. He tells them to be alert, to watch. We see the same thing happening here in another Bible reference, and I'm going to get to that one tomorrow. Have a great day. God bless.